Hey, everybody. Welcome to our next panel session of the BLISTER Summit. The topic for now is ski design. And what we're going to do is have these gentlemen introduce themselves, starting with the person to my right who we thought should get to sit right next to me since, as you've heard, maybe this was the person I did my first podcast ever with. And I was very bad, and Jed was good. But anyway, so we thought, thanks for being first. We'll put you first tonight. So talk a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, psyched to be here. My name is Jed Yeiser. I am the ski product director for K2 Sports. So I work with both line and K2 skis. I grew up in Vermont ski racing and sort of knew that I wanted to build skis ever since I was 10. Or so, and never really dreamed that I'd be able to do it professionally, and certainly not be here. And so started building a ski press and a bunch of forms in my garage and in my barn, and then happened to be at the right place at the right time, and started with K2 about 12 years ago. So, yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
I'm Mike McCabe, co-founder, CEO, and chief engineer of Folsom Custom Skis. Grew up in the Front Range corridor of Colorado here. Actually kind of cut my teeth in some of the extremes here in the early 2000s and some of the other kind of smaller events in Taos and stuff like that, and recognized pretty early on that my athletic career was going to be somewhat short-lived, and really had a passion for the product. And started building skis kind of similar to him, and joined up with another individual and put together a whole functioning facility in Boulder, Colorado, and launched Folsom Custom Skis in 2008, as soon as the biggest economic collapse ever happened.
Nailed it.
I'm Jake Stevens. I live in Park City, Utah. Grew up in Maine. Ski racing background. Ski raced through college. Coached ski racing for a while. It was supposed to be a one-year gig and ended up doing it for 7 or 8 years. And then got kind of bored of it, but knew the ski industry is where I wanted to be. Ended up at Rossignol as the racing director for essentially North America, but working with World Cup athletes, building boots, working on ski setups, how skis get tuned, how the setup works, how the whole system works. And then slowly got dragged into doing product development stuff globally on all the retail product. And the last 4 years, I've been focusing on that. I'm the Alpine category manager for Rossignol. I didn't really get my title to begin with, but so overseeing hard goods in the North America area. So that's where I'm at.
And Jake, that magnificent beard, that's fake, right?
Yeah, no, it's, I looked more like a bum a couple days ago. I cut about 4 inches off the bottom of it.
It's impressive stuff.
Yeah, it grows like a weed.
Yeah, so I've been growing this one out for about 5 years.
This is a week and a half.
All right, I'll leave now.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's aggressive. It's aggressive.
All right, what's going on, everybody? I'm Cyrus. I started Renoun Skis. It's a high-end premium ski brand based in Burlington, Vermont. I was an aeronautical engineer in training and realized I never wanted to do that for a job, so I dropped out and was building skis for fun at the time, and decided to keep building them, and came across this material that we now incorporate in all of our skis. It's a kind of fun material, and we patented that, put it in skis, and started winning awards. And 10 years later, here I am. So it's been a long ride, a lot of fun. And I, too, did not think I'd be sitting up here designing skis for a living. It's pretty wild. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I like the idea of, like, every year at the BLISTER Summit, we just kind of do a bit of a State of the Union on ski design. And I think part of that then is identifying current trends and seeing how much those shift. Maybe they stay quite similar over the course of a few years, and then there's a bit of a jump or something. And so, people can go back and look at the panel session we did at last year's BLISTER Summit, and I would encourage people to check that out. But I would love to put that question to the four of you. So I think in terms of getting a bit of the State of the Union, I'd like to hear each of you maybe signal out one current trend that maybe just in your own work you're kind of seeing, or it's feedback that you're getting from customers. And for now, maybe I'll ask, if you need a different question or a different way to answer, identify a favorite trend. We might get to less favorite trends in a minute here, but let's start there and see where we get.
Cool. I guess I'm up. Looking at trends in ski design, for me at least, I think is a tough way to look at things, because we're not looking at trends. We're looking at customers ultimately and trying to design the right ski for the customer, as opposed to saying like, oh, we're seeing ski design move in this direction and sort of we need to jump into that pool. And I would imagine the other three guys here would feel the same way. But I think one thing that we are seeing is that the market's expanding, especially in North America, and especially the free touring market. And at this point, there are some products that sort of address the needs of those customers fairly well. I think we as an industry are still figuring out what's working well in that category and what's not working out well. And so there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of reward ultimately for figuring out what's working for a new and emerging market. And I know that's not really the question that you asked. I mean, it's not like skis are getting lighter weight or we're seeing tighter side cut radiuses, because you see a huge variety of that everywhere. And so I don't know that I can really list like one trend in ski design that I would say is my favorite or least favorite.
Okay. And before Mike goes, this would be another thing that at least I would be interested in. If any of you feel like you're just receiving feedback where it's like, wow, it really seems like a majority in all of your respective worlds, it seems like the demand, what we're hearing is skiers want this or that. Mike?
Well, being a custom manufacturer kind of gives us a much different lens on this entire subject. And to echo what you just said, I don't really look at it as just trends. It's kind of a hard thing for me to boil it down like that. I guess I'll kind of pivot this and personalize it, which I think might be kind of an interesting way to take this. To kind of tie into something that Dav mentioned earlier, family skiing has all of a sudden become a thing for me. I'm married, I have a brand new kid. This is super exciting, and it's making me look at the mountain in a much different lens, a whole different way. Most of my good skier buddies have all moved up here. Ryan, sitting over there. I've got tons of friends in Aspen. All my good friends have moved on from, being in the Front Range area, so my ski group has changed. And inherently what that's going to do is change the way I want to ski. So for me personally, I'm looking at tighter side cut radius, more energetic skis in that light. And I'm finding that that's resonating a lot with the clientele that we're selling skis to, because, the meat of our market's kind of in that same demographic. So that's one thing that we're really noticing at Folsom is, we're kind of seeing that become more of the meat of the market, and maybe that's the way we're messaging it. Maybe that's what we're talking about more. But that's just kind of my personal take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we look at trends in a lot of different ways. We pay attention to the different categories of skis that are out there. There's a lot of categories. There's a lot of different ways to look at categories and break them down. Each brand, we do everything from racing at a high level to 118 underfoot skis. So there's a lot of different pieces to that, and to categorize things is a difficult task. To figure out what the trend is and the direction it's going, you kind of chase your tail a bit, because if you're chasing someone that's doing something really well, you're probably behind that, or you are behind them because you're chasing them. But if you accomplish that and you come out with it and you say, look what we've done, we've matched or made a great ski that's just like that ski, that company's probably already coming out with something that's new and different. So sure, we want to look at what the customer wants and what their needs are, looking at how do we reach those customers and get them on our product, but how do we figure out what the next I guess, trend would be. How do we create the next trend? And so it's not so much we benchmark everybody. We ski on everybody else's brands. We benchmark. I would say benchmarking is probably a better way of looking at it than what are the trends. It's, what is kind of working and how do we make something different, better, cooler, more outreaching?
Cyrus.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting question for sure. Because skis for a while, right, the rocker was just getting more and more insane, and the skis getting fatter and fatter and fatter, and now they're kind of reversing that trend. So I think that's the macro trend that's happening. But I think it's an interesting thing with the ski industry as a whole that it's been a while since I think brands have led the charge, right? So I think in the early days, like the 70s and 80s of ski design, there was a lot of the brands bringing new stuff to the table. Genuinely, you've never seen this before stuff. Here's a steel edge to the table, and consumers not wanting it, and then realizing, oh my God, how did I ever ski without steel edges? And I think it is an interesting thing that we, I think as a whole, the industry is unique in the sense we actually chase our customers, right? So we're constantly trying to figure out where our customers at and tuning our product to that. And I think there's, it's not so much, at least in my experience, it's not so much, creating a really cool and totally unique product as much as it's meeting a customer where they are, and they're always moving, which makes it interesting, which I think is what if we all do our jobs right, we're going to make skis that fit really well into the category for today, which will not be the same tomorrow or next year kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'm going to give you guys a trend, since you all seem to sort of say there aren't trends, and that's just not true. So I'll step in for you. Here's one. We are hearing more and more over the last couple of years from companies who are talking about how they are now fine-tuning the flex patterns of their skis relative to the length of the skis. And I think this kind of really started getting talked about maybe three to 4 years ago. And I would say prior to that, I just wasn't hearing that as much from companies. And I'm actually very curious to just hear, assuming y'all have heard of this, I'm curious to hear what you think, because frankly, part of me is like, wait, really? So previously, nobody was adjusting the flex patterns of their skis based on length? I'm like, so talk a little bit about, this actual trend, and whether you think this is something new in terms of ski design and development, or if it's like, well, I don't know, it sure seems like we've been doing this for quite a while now.
But you mean that, so somebody who's 6'6" and 225 pounds shouldn't have the same stiffness as somebody who's 5 feet? What are you talking about?
I'll let you go first, Cyrus. This seems to have touched a nerve.
No. I think he brings a good point, and I think I'll speak to Renoun. Fine tuning the stiffness of a ski for the length is really hard, because I am 6'6" and I weigh 225 pounds. So who am I to go test a ski for somebody who's 5'2" or something like that? So I think it's a really, really hard problem to have, or very hard problem to solve accurately. And we are definitely getting better at it, but have not, by any means perfected it yet.
Jake?
Yeah, I mean, we've focused on a bigger demographic of testers. That's one big piece of how we've focused on changing the flex pattern problem, I would have to say. Again, to your point, right, having me, a 200-pound guy ski on a woman's ski and tell a woman that it's the right flex for her, and she's 5 foot, 110 pounds, is kind of ludicrous. So we've expanded that look at who is testing our product or developing our product. We do a core test with a small group of people, but we have a very large group of trusted people around the world that we work with, all shapes and sizes, and really to focus on, is a 162 women-specific product skiing like a 162 women-specific product, or is it skiing like a 168 men's product or a 162 product that I would enjoy skiing on? Because those are different products. So we have focused on changing the materials, adjusting internal constructions, internal properties by size to focus on what the different flex patterns will work out to be. Now, that being said, on a grand scale, we're making thousands of pairs of skis. So is it a direct, we know exactly what flex each ski is? No, we don't have that, but we have an understanding of a flex pattern and what the relative flex should be throughout the range.
And just to clarify, since part of the question was, is there actually more attention being put on this fine-tune adjustment of a flex pattern to different lengths of skis? I guess you would say you are doing more?
We're putting more materials in skis. We're changing the properties of what we're using. It's not just a wood core anymore. We're changing I brought up props up here that actually show different materials just to show that there are, things going into the skis. So we can play with more, thicknesses of sidewalls, thicknesses of edges, thicknesses of the metal layers or the fibers that we're putting into the skis. So because of that technology, we're able to change that. So 10 years ago, we've come a long way. We've come a long way in 20 years, a really long way. So yes, we are able to do more of it because we have way more control over the materials we're putting inside the skis.
Mike?
Well, I guess I'll start with that is great. I'm really, really glad to hear that big companies are now, focusing on that sector a little bit more so. Day one of the biggest things that Folsom Skis offered was a custom flex pattern to who you were. So just as you were saying, a ski is a sum of all its parts. It's not just the wood core, it's not just the metal laminate, it's not just, da-da-da-da-da. It's all of the things put together, and that's something that's truly set us apart from day one is we have a dialogue with you, we figure out who you are, we look at your height, your metrics, your background, what have you been skiing on? Let's kind of benchmark that. Let's establish some baselines, and it sounds a little cliche, but let's try to see the mountain through your lens. Let's try to figure this out, and we know our ingredient list, and we have a really unique system that used to be, mostly in my head and other people's heads that are internal for the company, that is now becoming more metric based off of a table that we have that actually quantifies how our skis are flexing, how the materials that are being put into the skis are helping add dampening qualities, all these other characteristics that we're looking for to really make sure that we can make small meaningful changes to make that ski really sing for a guy that's 6'6", 225, or a gal that's 5'2", 100. That's something that from day one, 13, 14 years in manufacturing, we've consistently gotten better at that. And to sound like a broken record, it is truly a sum of all its parts. It's not just making the wood core a little thicker. It's like, what kind of wood blend do you want in here? Do you want, an aspen dominant blend that's going to be a little bit more maneuverable, a little bit more forgiving? You want some maple in there for, your bigger, heavier hitter skiers, or, something that's more front side oriented. There's a laundry list of calculations that go into that, and that's certainly something that I feel as a custom manufacturer really gives us an interesting approach, because sure, we're chasing customers at the end of the day, but once we got you, we sit you down and we talk to you and we figure out what's relevant. Who are you? Let's do less and let's do a really good job at it. So it's a big thing, and I'm really glad to start hearing that that's becoming a bigger piece of some of the bigger companies that certainly have a lot more resources than we do.
Quick jump in before Jed.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because if you look at how the custom ski world is to where we are, it's very different, right? It's massively different. We develop a lot of skis. We don't have the ability to say what exactly do you want, and that's a really cool, unique part. And a thing that's wild to me is how many companies are making really good products, right? And you look at how we build a ski as a big brand. We have to focus on, okay, here's a family, here's a model, and here's how we're going to build it. How do we do that to get as close as we can to what you're doing with a custom build? So we are doing it in the sense of we have to use more people to develop the product. And that's how we can get to a close idea of a more custom. But as Rossignol, we just built too many skis to be able to be custom. So it's a very unique thing. Yeah.
You know, you guys are the ones that are establishing these benchmarks that give us
Sure.
that starting point.
Sure.
You know,
Yep.
how did that ski function?
Yep.
It's generally where we're coming from. So it's mutually
Cool.
beneficial for
Yeah,
sure.
For sure, absolutely.
So Jed, how are you thinking about fine-tuning flex patterns to lengths?
Well, I mean, I think let's start here. Anytime you're changing the length of a ski, you're scaling the flex pattern, right? The length is different, therefore the stiffness distribution through, depending on what lens you want to look at, is going to be different. And so we have always scaled our stiffness profiles or our stiffness distributions because you need to. You know, a shorter ski, if you had the same bending stiffness at, let's say, 40 different cross sections, as let's put numbers. If you have a 190 and you've got the same bending stiffness on that 190 at 40 different cross sections in a 160, that 160 is going to feel like an absolute I-beam, right? And so that would be not scaling stiffness. And so we've spent a lot of time working on ways to basically preserve that same stiffness distribution in the ski no matter what the size is. And so what we do, and I apologize if I get a little bit engineering-y, is we normalize our stiffness curves, which basically means we have a dimensionless distribution that we can then apply to any overall stiffness and any length of ski. And so for us, that has really worked well. And the reason we like having that normalized stiffness profile is that, I mean, like these guys have said, a ski is more than just a flex profile. It's a sum of its parts. And ultimately, what we're trying to achieve by scaling our stiffness profiles is to make the ski feel similar, that it will work the same way for the intended use. And so you're not only scaling your stiffness profile, you're scaling your footprint, you're scaling your rocker profile, you're scaling everything in the ski. And so the way we look at it is how can we basically change the stiffness profile, and for us it's by using this normalized stiffness profile, so that when you're scaling the side cut, when you're scaling the rocker, and you're scaling the stiffness distribution, a 163 still feels the same or similar to a 181, right? And within that, you know, we're not really changing the shape of that stiffness distribution because the shape of that stiffness distribution was designed alongside the side cut and the rocker profile and the material selection. And so we really try and keep our stiffness profiles as uniform as possible throughout a size run because that helps the ski feel consistent. And ultimately, each model is designed for a certain use case and a certain consumer. And by doing that, we're able to really make sure that we're being as consistent as possible and giving different sized consumers the most similar experience as possible, right? And then, you know, when you look at you know, what you're able to do with different stiffness distributions, the stiffness distribution is probably the largest, most efficient lever you can pull from a ski design standpoint to affect a change in the ski. And so anytime we're developing a ski, we generally start with a stiffness profile that has worked well for us in a similar product category in the past. And then as we go and develop and work with, you know, testers across the world and get feedback on, you know, things that the ski does well, things that the ski doesn't do as well, we may alter that stiffness distribution. And so like across our range, we probably use 40, 50 different stiffness distributions that are all really tailored to the intended use and intended to be used with a given, you know, side cut progression and rocker profile as well. You know, I know some people are starting to talk about changing the stiffness distribution based on size. And I can see how in some specific cases that would be advantageous through a certain lens. Ultimately, I don't think that somebody skiing a 163 wants to ski differently than someone skiing a 181. And so that's why we try and keep our stiffness profiles as uniform as possible. Were we a custom manufacturer, right, where you're having a conversation with an individual, then you can really start to change your stiffness profiles for that individual. That like just because the stiffness profiles that we have on our skis are designed for a given side cut radius progression and rocker profile doesn't mean that's the only stiffness profile that will work, but it's the one that gets us the intended use we want. And so if you're talking to a customer, you could say, okay, the intended use might be a little bit different. So how can we change the stiffness profile to have this footprint or this rocker profile meet your needs better? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Cyrus, I'm really curious, having heard that, how much agreement or disagreement you have with what Jed's just said in terms of your approach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for us, our scale is certainly a lot smaller than Razzie as well. But one thing we have also done in our own way is really increase the number of people on our skis. So from that perspective, and yeah, the normalization of the flex pattern, absolutely. Like you gotta start there. And the other interesting thing too is some manufacturers will also scale the waist width with their size run, but it's not proportional to the ski. So like, it's kind of funny because we're also designing a ski, so like a 160, for example, and a 190. Even if you scale the waist width a little bit, the ski is always comparatively fatter at a 160 than a 190. So that ski is going to handle, even if you're normalizing the flex pattern, it's going to be different. So it's really tough. So like, for example, when we developed our first women's ski, the rule of thumb with that was there's no guys allowed on that ski, and that was just a way we like, okay, this is how we're going to design a women's ski. And because of that, it started out, we prototyped it at like a 163. And so like that ski morphed from, like the genesis was from a 163, and it grew in both directions from there. Whereas when we started the Citadel 106, I think it was 105 initially, but a 106, that was my kind of ski. So it started at 191, which makes no sense, right? So for like the general consumer, the number of skis that are sold above 190, I mean, you guys all probably ski 190s or something like that, but most consumers are not skiing 190s kind of thing. So the genesis, like when the ski is started too, it also kind of really affects that. So flex, absolutely, and I think it's one of the most important elements. Like you're saying, I think you put it perfectly. It's the easiest and then by far the largest lever to pull from a manufacturing perspective, like an easy, quick. It's a number on a keypad. You can just dial it up, boom, done. You just stiffen your ski by whatever millimeter for the core thickness, and then
that easy.
Yeah, and then materials come in, and that's where the fine. Yeah, and people don't like a core thickness. Like our cores, it changed like a millimeter, maybe two, but a lot of the core thickness, like the difference of the stiffness, is the grain of sand, the sandpaper that goes and like actually mills that core out. If that sandpaper is new or not new, that core is gonna actually be stiffer. So like depending on the production run, like how new that sandpaper is, like did the guy put it on right? That literally the thickness of a grain of sand on that piece of wood will also affect it. So you're also working with different humidities of wood, and like there's a lot that goes into it, but it's so important. Yeah.
To that point, your wood is your only organic that you really have to levelize, and you can see a lot of variability there. So
Huge variability.
Big variability, and you're very accurate in saying just a grain of sand can change the way that entire core is going to react. And
I think it's kind of cool.
Insane.
Yeah, and like skis at the end of the day, I think no matter how hard as ski designers we try to go after something, the really beautiful part to me is like as a nerd who came into this from an engineering background, all that stuff, skis are art at the end of the day. And it's really is like once you understand how the numbers and the materials like interact, you can build a ski that's maybe more desirable to more people, but you can design the best ski on paper, and it's going to ski like absolute trash. Then vice versa.
That's an amazing thing, because the majority, I don't do the engineering side of things, right? These guys spend their time doing that. My side of the development thing is skiability. I understand the engineering, and I work with the engineers and speak with them, but at the end of the day, I'm an on-snow person. How does the ski function? And what do we need to make for changes? From there, we adjust with the engineers, but we have plenty of skis that engineers have designed and we have molded, and they've given us to go ski on, and we're like, these are trash. These skis do not work. And they're like, yes, they do. Look at the computer. It says it works. Like, it doesn't work. And we can't adjust it to make it work. We have to start over. This doesn't, and some of our engineers, we're again a big company, so some of our engineers are just engineers. They're not, they're not ingrained in the ski world like we all are, and so sometimes they can't wrap their head around the fact that what the computer says is right, and we're saying it is not right. This thing doesn't work. So anyway.
Yeah,
it's a lot of factors.
A lot of factors.
Yeah, theory to actually putting snow on, skis to the snow is a totally different deal.
It's a totally different deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just for you guys, like Cyrus was talking about core profiles and thicknesses, if we put you on a ski that had a given core profile and a second ski that had a core profile that was uniform, like 0.2 millimeters different or thicker, you would absolutely pick up on that. So the differences in the tolerances in core processing are really, really, really tight, because a really small change in your core profile will have a really meaningful change on the way the ski feels on snow.
Yeah, and to kind of add into that, that's exactly our first kind of step of establishing that flex profile is about a 0.3 to 0.4 addition or subtraction to the core, ranging from a 1 to a 6, stepwise up or down, and it's 10 to 15% overall flex in the ski. Yeah, it's very notable. So you got to have your stuff zeroed right and cutting correctly.
and do in process QC.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, our next topic, and this kind of pains me. I kind of hate this. As a very broad generalization, I'd say that lighter skis are getting better and performing better. As somebody who has been banging the drum loudly, and sometimes it feels like by myself for years in the industry, when frankly a lot of other outlets are like, the new light thing is way better than the old thing, and it's like these ski completely different and usually worse. I do have to say, and I think give credit where credit is due, I do think that we are seeing lighter weight skis perform with better suspension and just kind of a higher performance envelope than, say, 5 years ago and certainly 10 years ago. So the simple, or not so simple question, but my question will be short, is why is that?
Who wants to start?
I guess I can spearhead this one. I think that's a function of a lot of things, and I think we're going to be scratching the surface here, but I'll give my 2 cents. One of the many things that the ski industry is relegated to is that pendulum, and we're coming back to the middle right now, which is a just more reasonable weight. We're not pushing it as far as it needed to go. That's step one. Step two is materials. They've gotten better. We've gotten access to things that can do a better job of taking less weight and doing a better distribution of that less weight across a ski that needs to, stay composed and, not just have that, for lack of better terms, pingy feel, just getting bounced around. And, the analogy I always say for an overly lightweight ski is you just gave the thing ADD. It cannot focus on what's in front of it. It's just, and, material advancements in accessibility to smaller companies like myself, specifically in my case, our case, Folsom Skis. Graphene is something that I've had a lot of interest in a long time, and it just wasn't commercially available for a small scale manufacturer in any way, shape, or form. And it just now became available. And so it is doing a really good job of adding a more damp quality to our skis that are full carbon, full aspen, our very lightweight touring builds. And that's another big function. And I think ultimately, I'm seeing this unanimously across kind of every type of company in this industry. Is it seems like things are just becoming more and more reasonable, which, again, to drive back to the step one, is that pendulum's coming to the middle. And I think we're all kind of understanding what the ultra lightweight skis are capable of and saying, okay, this is like, quick transition skimo ski, that is what it is. Let's kind of focus on, where we want to fit into that and where those thresholds are. And, it's a big thing that we have focused on as a company is where is that threshold? What is this ski in general length, general width? Where do we find that grams per ski is going to have a pretty large fatigue on its overall ability to really perform in the downhill? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't disagree with a lot of what you just said as far as materials. But I think also, if you look, especially 10 years ago and to a lesser extent, 5 years ago, lightweight for the lightweight skis was sort of the most important objective for a lot of the lightweight skis. So, manufacturers said, okay, well, we're selling this as a lightweight, let's say touring ski, it's light, this checks the box.
Meaning this checks the box, meaning it has to come in, say, lighter than 1,500
Lighter than
grams.
1,500 grams, and like if it's lighter than 1,500 grams and it's still skiable in certain conditions, right? Like, and I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, but like,
But not really.
But as an industry, we spent a lot more time really looking at lightweight skis and understanding beyond just them being light, how do lightweight skis interact with snow differently than a more massive ski, and what changes do we need to make in the design, whether that be side cut radius profile, flex profile, changing the sort of ratios of torsional stiffness to longitudinal stiffness to not necessarily cheat physics, but to have some of those compromises that you make when you go to a lighter ski. I mean, it's lighter, it will react more than a heavy ski. Mass damping is a real thing. So what can we do to tweak the designs of these lighter skis so that the compromises we're making are less severe? And for us, something that we've spent a lot of time looking at is really where can we put mass in the ski to make it most efficient, and it's still going to be a lightweight ski, but how does mass placement in the ski actually impact the stability of the ski? But I think a lot of it is like the market was becoming more interested in lightweight skis that didn't ski like shit. And so we as manufacturers needed to spend a lot of time figuring out how to do that. And there's been a lot of effort put into to really understanding the way that a lightweight structure interacts with snow.
Cyrus, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this, because you've been kind of doing the lightweight thing for a minute.
Right. And we just had this conversation today, actually,
Yeah.
right? So I've got one word, which is optimization, right? So engineering is just a bunch of trade-offs. And, for a while, like you said, everybody was like, great, as light as it can go, if it's light, it wins. And like, I think we all know this trend, right? Like, how big were phones getting, right? And then finally got small again. And I think it's just an example of the pendulum kind of coming back and the optimization of, well, two things. One, people realizing they don't need a super hyper lightweight ski. And two, the materials that people, so like carbon fiber, right? It used to be so expensive. It was kind of like, nah, you can't really put this in the mass consumer ski. It's just too expensive. But the cost, came down enough that it could now be explored. So I think there was that, and then just learning the optimization of these like newly available, like financially available materials to companies. Also bindings, right? Like if you have a really well-designed binding, you just saved yourself 400 grams, and boom, you can now have a lightweight setup with a pair of skis that's like 1,800 pounds. 1,800 pounds, yeah.
That'd be
1,800
amazing.
pounds.
That'd be
Drew Kelly's
Pro model.
right
there.
Yeah, Drew Kelly's pro model.
Call that one
But
the dead
yeah, I
weight.
think optimization is a big thing, and I think consumers they're mostly realizing, because we were talking about this today, is the Citadel, when we first launched that, even with our fancy material and stuff in there, it was like 1,450 grams or something, and yeah, it was light, and our material I think made it better for a ski that was featherweight, but it got heavier, and I think it got a much better ski because of it. So I think our consumers are realizing it's not just a size game kind of thing.
So Jake, on the, company that is selling a lot of skis, you're not getting specific feedback. I asked early about the kind of consumer feedback, or let's say talking to sales reps or something. They're not in your ear about lighten this stuff up?
They were in our ear about it, but the big thing that we look at is the confidence level you have on a ski. And that's a conversation we have in our development team all the time, is how confident are you on the product that you're on? And we haven't really gone down that ultra lightweight. I mean, we have some lightweight skis. We just launched a new line of skis that's lighter, that ski well. Again, I think we waited long enough that pendulum went way out there, and it came back, and then we were like, all right, thank God it settled over here, because that's the weight that we want to be at. We don't make a ton of them, but the skis that we excel with are confidence-inspiring skis, so they've gotten lighter. If you look back 15 years ago, of course, the skis were heavy. I come from racing, and if you pick up a pair of downhill skis that you just watched at the Olympics, those things are, if you haven't ever done that before, you should. If you ever see a pair of downhill skis with bindings on it, those things are heavy. And that's where a lot of our technology had come from, and that's we've gotten better with technology and we've gotten better with skiability overall. And I think that the lightness, the pendulum where it's landed, we would have gotten there if we hadn't pushed so hard to get really light. We would have gotten lighter because we've gotten so much better with technology. We've been able to get crafty with some of the materials that we're using. Like you said, even at our scale, we buy mass amounts of product or materials from companies. So it's probably cheaper for us to buy the carbons or the whatevers, but it still was astronomically expensive. Now that those prices have come down, we can start to play with those things. And I think that we've seen the weight get down to a point where we're happy about the confidence that the ski is going to give you and the weight that it's on your foot. A really lightweight ski is not, it doesn't really give you confidence.
Do you guys, do you think the pendulum will keep going? Like, will skis turn into bricks again?
No.
So we're just reading it forever, right?
Bindings,
I think we're getting close.
Bindings have
That's
made
interesting.
such a leap.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is probably where I just need to say, because like weight can be an amazing thing. So if somebody's listening to this or watching this and is like, I'm that guy or girl who thinks I want that 1,000 gram, 1,200 gram, it's like, if you haven't gone to the other end of the spectrum and you like skiing, maybe get into something heavier and just see what that's like. And oh, by the way, you're at a Blister Summit. Go try some heavier skis while you're here and try some lighter ones. And there isn't like a right answer. The right answer is for you, the individual, obviously. But man, the trade-off seems significant. Anybody can pretty much go make anything work. But in terms of what you want to do and the way you want to be feeling or experiencing the mountain, I mean, it's, as somebody who gets on a lot of skis in different weight ranges, it's a very different experience of the mountain. So anyway, I'll stop with that, confidence inspiring. Do you all have any questions? Because I got some more. We can keep going, but if, so the question here is, have any of your companies considered a loyalty program to just continue to incentivize potential customers to keep coming back to your particular brand?
We're on different scales.
Yeah. Which is kind of why I think this is interesting.
We're on different scales. For sure, we want to obtain a customer and get them to stay with us forever. The best way for us to do it is to create kind of loyalty with the people that we work with before the customer gets there, with the shops and with the because we sell to shops. We're a wholesaler. We sell out to. We don't sell direct. We don't work directly with each customer. So we're on a different playing field or a different vision of what's right. I mean, from my side of things, not from the marketing side, but from the product side, it's build good product and you will create loyalty. And that's kind of the motto that I think every brand kind of has, but the brands that have stuck around that aren't working, like these guys are a lot closer to the customer. That is how we've been able to survive and grow, is that the customer comes back and says, I've got five pairs of Rossignol's in my garage, and what's the next pair I need to buy? So that's my kind of position on that. I don't know about.
Good answer. Yeah. What was your name? Dave. Good question. Definitely to tie into what Jake just mentioned, much different scales. We're very close to our clients, very, very, very close. We have a very, I hate to give it kind of a romantic analogy, but we're dating up front. We're figuring out who we are, what's important to you. Are we going to be able to find a common ground? And, once we win you as a client, absolutely do we want to incentivize you to come back and bring your friends and family and all that. So, specifically from, our perspective, Folsom Skis, we're really very diligent on our CRM and just who you are, and really keeping very close track of, who you are, anybody you may be brought to the table. And then as that relationship blossoms, we get into some really solid loyalty programs. We don't advertise them because it's very case by case. And it's, different depending on, where we are in the country, who we're working with, all that good stuff. But from just a client retention perspective, that is one of the biggest, things that is important to us, is when we spend the time to, create this relationship and really build this very highly personalized product that is essentially giving you a much higher connection to that product than you're going to find, across any other larger brand that doesn't have that opportunity. Do we want to, see that fall away in a few years or a few months or whatever it may be? No, we want to lean into it. We want to grow the relationship, and that's absolutely one of the most complex and most fun parts of scaling a custom manufacturer, is the customer service, the relationships, keeping those up, making sure we keep good, organized back end of that, and really track that in a very robust way. So, yeah, we totally do that.
Yeah, I mean, like for us, with being a very large ski company, that's more sales and marketing for K2 than product. So the best tools that I have to get a return customer is to give that customer a positive experience. And we have talked about some like consumer recycling and end of life stuff that has involved product. But as far as establishing like loyalty programs, that's really sales and marketing for K2 at least.
Yeah, I think, marketing wise, you could certainly have plenty of programs. I think the things that we all share are quality product and culture. And you can build a culture no matter what your size. And there's a reason why people will keep coming back to Rossi and buying the next thing, because of the culture that Rossi exudes and stuff. Another thing too is, I've run the numbers on a subscription-based ski company. If anyone wants to start a subscription-based ski company, that's retention, crazy high retention rate stuff. So if anyone wants to do that, I'll help you start it.
Next question.
So the question was, with everything that's happening with the global supply chain and the difficulty we as ski companies have sourcing materials, which I'll speak for K2, they're significant, is that going to hamper our ability to innovate? And I'd actually say no. If anything, it's going to force us to innovate more, because we can't necessarily rely on pre-existing supply chain channels and pre-existing materials. And so we need to spend more of our time looking for alternatives and new solutions to existing problems that we wouldn't have had to otherwise.
I'm going to completely echo what Jed just mentioned. I mean, it's become such an unreliable and rocky road to really be able to predict how the company's scaling, to really have that predictive purchase of that material, that you're forced to think inventively and come up with new solutions. And it's sometimes some of the toughest times really force innovation because you got no other choice.
Yeah, to that point, it's going to be focused. We're going to have to focus more. I mean, we are already focusing more and trying to figure out easier, better solutions, and not easier in the sense of using worse materials, that type of thing. It's just, what is a better solution? We've been doing it wrong. How do we do it better and with the resources we have? Because it's confusing, honestly, at this point in time.
It sure is.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think it is an opportunity for us to, as brands, by having to design in other and new ways, is actually create a product that the consumer wasn't expecting. So I'm kind of excited to see what happens when you are constrained, what products come out of that nobody, in consumer included, which is something that I was saying earlier, is kind of tends to be what we aim for. But what comes out that none of us were expecting. So I'm psyched for that.
So the question is, torsional stiffness. Is there such thing as too much torsional stiffness?
I can be really
Let's go quick.
Yeah. To both of your questions, yes. Torsional stiffness is incredibly important in the performance of a ski, and you can absolutely have too much of it. A lot of it depends on the application. It's a lot harder to have too much torsional stiffness on like a race or piste-based ski than it is on a more freeride ski. But yeah.
Yeah, in complete agreement. Too little can be sloppy, loose, uncontrollable. Too much can be knee wrenching, painful. If you've never skied on a true downhill ski, that'll wake you up real quick to what too much torsional stiffness can do if you're not able to turn that ski. So yeah, absolutely. They're very, very important and fundamental to ski design.
But to that point, if you ski on a race ski, I mean, you watch the Olympics and you watch these athletes on these skis that are the absolute strongest skis that any company is building. They're not as torsionally stiff as you think they are, but they're more torsionally stiff than you think they are. There's a lot going on with those products, right? So we pull a lot of that, in my company, because racing is huge with what we do, and we pull a lot of our technology from that. We're able to play with the torsional stiffness and just the overall reactivity to the snow. And so, we build skis that are the tip of the ski is twisting or flexing in different ways than the body of the ski, that if we did that in a retail ski, we'd kill someone. So that's a kind of a loaded question in a lot of respects, because there's a lot that goes into that whole thing.
Yeah, I agree with all this. I think in our particular case, the material we put inside our skis, because it does change depending on what kind of vibrations are the ski's on, basically, that's been another level of engineering that we've had to go through and testing to figure out, okay, what's the torsional rigidity of the ski in this speed, at these vibrations versus this speed and that vibration, since it is changing, which adds a kind of a third dimension to the design side of things. And we're new to this. It's a pretty new material to the ski industry as a whole. So it's a fun one.
So the question was, when you're designing a new ski, how many prototypes do you tend to build, and how long does the whole process take from proto to production?
Sometimes one. We've had some skis that came out of the box, but first one sucked. We made it again. Second one was great, and we put it into production, and it was one of our best-selling skis until we replaced it with another one. And other times, it's 20, 30, 40, but that's Renoun. Renoun's way smaller than Rossi. And I'm sure 20, 30, 40 is what Rossi does, overnight. So I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, it's all over the map. A good ski design, it will take. The Soul 7 took 5 prototypes, and that was it. And it was,
it's amazing.
We know that ski, and everybody has heard about that ski. So you look at that. Sometimes we just dig to the bottom of the barrel to try to get the ski right, and it takes a lot of versions. So it's all over the map in that aspect.
And there isn't a typical time length?
We have a time constraint.
I've heard about those.
Yeah, there's timelines, right? We're that, again, a difference between some of the things that we're doing here in big scale. We're working in cycles, and we know we're planned out. Well, I just sat in meetings for 26, 27, so we're planning out that far for our lines and what we're doing, and that's because we're looking at what is the future and what we're trying to accomplish, right? That timeline's going to change. Those things in 26, 27 are going to change, but the 23, 24, 25, we're moving forward on that stuff. So that's our timelines on what the next generations are. So if skis start to take a long time to develop, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Totally different answer for us being a custom manufacturer. We're constantly prototyping. Really the biggest proponent for the way that we're going to look at it is how far outside of the box that ski is going to be. So if it fits within our, general families and general customizations, then, I can bring a new model. We can bring a new model to market real quick and have 1 or 2 prototypes and really have a fundamental understanding of our ingredient list and what's going to happen there. But if we're faced with a really unique problem or, ski that we need to design, it could be a few more, if it's really outlier, which we run into a lot of that. A lot of reverse engineering products too, so.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to add a whole lot.
Then don't.
Okay.
Cool. So the question is, let's talk about women-specific skis. And have you ever designed a ski first as a women's ski?
Yeah. We've got 4 dudes up here. Talk to McKenna afterwards. We do a lot of work with McKenna. She can provide a ton of insight into it. We have absolutely developed some women's skis before men's skis in the past. For us as K2, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've done more and more testing with men and women together. where a lot of our testing has led us to where we used to put a lot of effort into saying our men's and women's skis are completely different, and the men's skis are developed for men and the women's skis are developed for women. And the testing that we've done over the last 3 years has really sort of shown us that gender's not that important in ski selection, size and ability is. And so that's the way that we're moving. But as a brand, we need to be very aware of shrinking it and pinking it and not developing with women, making sure that women are included in that process, and making sure that we're not taking attention away from women's specific product, because it is important.
Yeah. Again, being a custom manufacturer, much different lens that we have and different approach. We used to have specific female models, and they were just the same mold that was used for the men's model with a different name. And for this year, we brought everything together and went full unisex, because just as Jed said, size and ability really is a much, much bigger dictator to what we're going to do to that ski than if you're a male or a female. So, in the custom realm, you can make it look however you want from us. So the aesthetic is kind of a whole nother selection, which if you want it pink, sweet. If you want, daggers and skulls, sweet, no problem. We can do that too. So, it's just kind of a different lens. We have a much different approach.
Jake?
About, I think it's 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we hired female-specific global product managers that oversee all of the divisions, different divisions. In that same vein or same time frame, we moved the product development into their hands. So we oversee what's happening in product development. I have not to say that I haven't skied on a woman's specific ski as part of the process, but we have, for both boots and skis, we have a female driving all that product development, what the design is, what the focus is going to be, what the direction will be, what the graphic story will be, what the story's been. Since doing that, we've seen a massive uptick in our women's specific product, which goes to show that I don't know what women want, and never will. And so yeah, we've moved that direction to have women actually designing the product that's designed for them. And if they want feedback from our the male half of the team, then we're happy to give it. But we're not driving that train down the tracks. So that's, I think, hopefully that answers that from our side.
Yeah, I'll just speak to what we have done in the past, because I think our future can always get better, because obviously I'm a guy. The Earhart, so we developed that ski, and the idea behind that was, only women are going to be in that room for that conversation around the development of it and the iterations that come out of it. I think, and that ski actually ended up turning into our endurance, turning into a men's ski. I think where we can get better is eventually having somebody, in our case, I design skis and we have an in-house guy, but having the next person be a woman designer as well, who's actually physically on CAD drawing that stuff up as well, that we can do in the future. We can get better from that side of things. Also from a marketing side, what is a women's ski, a men's ski? Where's that line drawn? It's a really hard, because skis are like jeans, right? There's a million out there, and just because I'm tall doesn't mean my buddy who's also tall is going to fit in the same kind of jeans. And skis are, I think, a lot like that, except that men's, women's, obviously there's some pretty obvious differences that need to be made. Whereas skis, I've heard arguments like women have wider hips, so they were forced to have this, and I just, I've never seen personally how that translates to design philosophy. And maybe it's there, I don't know, or what I do know is that it's not there. But I think at the end of the day, we need more women. I think leading that charge with that. And in our tiny way, we kind of handed that off, and I hope it can improve. But by no means have we gotten there yet.
And if I just may say quickly, I don't want to speak for all of us at Blister, but we've had a lot of conversations about this. And my take on this is, when we are talking about design, specifically about design, I would love to see everything move to a unisex modeling, right? I think it is completely incoherent to talk about women's specific skis. And These guys, we've talked about, how tall are you? What is your size? What is your ability or your aggressiveness level? These are far more relevant details than what your gender is. And so I would love to see from a design point of view, and frankly, I'd love to see I know the reasons with a number of the companies in the game. I know the reasons why they kind of have to, some feel like, continue to talk about their women's skis. We all want more women in skiing. We want everybody in this, but I do not think it is honest to talk about gender-specific differences when it comes to design. That's just my take on this, and I'm happy to, hopefully that's a conversation starter, not a stopper maybe, and I think then we can talk about how do we get more women interested in the sport. And I think there is all kinds of interesting things that can be done that have nothing to do with actual design of product. So that's just kind of my take on that. And, again, McKenna and I were talking about this topic on one of our Gear 30 podcasts. Hadley Hammer and I have talked about this, and we'll continue to talk about this. But for where we sit right now in terms of how, kind of what we do at Blister is we don't really assess graphics, right? Like, you can make up your own minds about that. But when it comes to design, I just think the future, the present and the future, I think that should be a unisex conversation when it comes to design, or we're doing something dishonest. Just my take. We had a couple more people. Yep. So the question is, what's next? And the question was, it seems like a lot of product is getting pretty dialed. So where on earth can we go from here? What's the next kind of revolution?
I would say materials and manufacturing are going to be the two biggest changes you see. As far as how that impacts the skis themselves, depending on the materials and the manufacturing methods that you end up seeing implemented, it could give us a lot more flexibility on, let's say, tailoring fiber angles in different places in skis, and allowing us to better get different properties of the ski to work together. But it's also, like, the ski market is changing. And so, like, what we could do now for the ski market in 5 years or 10 years really depends on shifts in the market and where we want to put our effort. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, for sure. I think what you're maybe looking for, maybe not totally right on this assertion, but I don't think there's going to be that rocker breakthrough anytime soon. That was revolutionary, and everything that's kind of making the modern ski is we've found what's working, and we know how to kind of dial it in. I think what's next is really focusing on sustainability and how we're going to be building less products and more tailored products for that individual. I think that's a big part to kind of tie back to what Jed said of how you're manufacturing these products, what you're implementing, and ultimately your footprint on this industry.
It's a wild thing how many brands are making really, really good skis. I mean, there aren't a lot of really bad skis out there. And because of all the brands that are making really good skis, and nobody has really slapped us in the face with like oh my God, I can't believe we didn't think of that. Because that hasn't happened recently, I don't see that there's going to be a massive whoa moment like there has been. We went from straight to the shape skis to the to the rocker to it is a technology thing, it's a sustainability thing, and then eventually it's just that VR goggle metaverse thing.
Let's hope not.
Cyrus?
Yeah, I'm a little biased, obviously, since the entire foundation of Renoun is built on a new age, space age kind of NASA material that we stole from them, basically. So yeah, I think like materials is a huge part, and we've obviously put a lot of eggs in that basket in terms of it's a new material that hasn't really been explored a whole lot. I remember when I first found it, I was shocked that it hadn't been used before. So yeah, I think materials. There's a lot of stuff out there in other industries that hasn't maybe trickled into the ski industry yet. Is it going to be the earth-shattering shaped rocker kind of stuff? Maybe not. I am really excited about additive manufacturing, so like 3D printing stuff, because then talk about tailoring, you can put shapes in, you can put hollow sections in skis suddenly, you can put all these really interesting ways, and maybe the cost comes down to the point. I mean, they're 3D printing rockets now. Rockets obviously a little bit different price point, but the fact that you can do that, right? Like you couldn't 3D print a rocket 10 years ago. It was not even, it's no way. So what happens when that trickles down to the ski world? So I think additive manufacturing is really interesting at some point, because I mean, we all know a sidewall is really expensive. And what if you like 3D print, that on the side of your ski, and then suddenly, your sidewall cost just got chopped in half, which 50% reduction in material costs is a lot. So, no, I'm really excited about that.
One thing, here's a question. We're going to poll the audience. How many people in this room skied at least 2 skis in the last 2 days? Maybe better if it was like 3 skis or more, but how many people, show of hands, skied 2 different skis in the last 2 days? Okay. Keep your hands up. How do I want to do this? Lower your hands if you noticed no difference between the different skis you skied, whether it was 2 or 3. Lower your hands if you noticed no difference. You all noticed. So the only reason I ask this, sometimes when we start saying, thank you, when we start saying things like, there's so many good skis out there. So what? Like, if we haven't helped you find the ski that clicks best with you, who cares, right? And so my only point by doing that, and for people listening or watching this, so nobody said that they could not detect differences in 2 skis. And I would say over the history of I don't know how many skis we've been on, we've never thought that thing skis exactly like that, except sometimes when a certain ski had 2 different top sheets, but was literally the same ski. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing here. So while it might be a generalization that we accept that skis are getting better, man, the feel is not the same. And that's why you're all here trying some of these things. It's why some of you read BLISTER, and it's kind of why we do what we do. And anyway, just wanted to make sure we were all clear on that point. Yeah. Let's call it. That was good. Thank you, really. And I think this was such a cool mix of voices and backgrounds, from some very big companies to a custom and to a smaller manufacturer. And I thank you again. I'm really happy for the range of perspectives offered here. And thanks once again for your good questions. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you, now.